prices are still stubbornly high. More when we take a look by the numbers. And one little girl's special escort for the first day of school after tragedy struck. But we do begin with Hurricane Ernesto barreling across the Atlantic Ocean at this hour, packing 75-mile-an-hour winds and gaining strength. After battering parts of Puerto Rico, Ernesto is now headed north and could become a major Category 3 by Friday morning, approaching Bermuda and triggering rip currents all along the coast of the U.S. mainland. Ernesto struck Puerto Rico as a tropical storm with powerful winds and flooding rains, up to a foot of rain in some places. It knocked out power to nearly half of the island. Tonight, roughly 700,000 customers remain without electricity. And keep in mind, Puerto Rico still is not fully recovered from Hurricane Maria back in 2017. This is obviously a new blow to that recovery. We'll have the timing and track of the storm in a minute, but first, Ike Ajachi leads us off from Puerto Rico.
Tonight, Ernesto is now officially a hurricane and growing stronger by the hour. After battering Puerto Rico, the images still coming in. Ernesto dumping nearly a foot of rain in spots. Rivers raging over their banks. Some villages reportedly cut off. Powerful winds gusting above 85 miles per hour, knocking down trees all over the island and knocking out power to more than 700,000 homes and businesses by midday.
Puerto Rico dealing with the effects of Ernesto all day long, with crews working to clear streets filled with downed trees, just like this one.
When did you lose power?
Yesterday.
Natalia Brito and her family now staying with relatives who have a generator.
I'm hoping the energy will come back soon, so that's my only hope.
In Cabo Rojo, they needed heavy equipment to clear this road so emergency vehicles could get through. The system hitting the Leeward Islands with heavy rain and howling wind. From the Virgin Islands to Guadeloupe. In Saint Martin, this cargo ship breaking away, drifting in the bay. Back in Puerto Rico, the trauma from 2017's Hurricane Maria still fresh in the minds of so many here. The Category 4 storm decimating the island. 7 years later, Puerto Rico's power grid still hasn't fully recovered.
Many on that island still in the dark tonight. Ike Ajachi joins us now from Puerto Rico. Ike, any word on when power could be restored?
Well, Lindsay, as Ernesto continues to move away from Puerto Rico, we're still far from out of the woods here. The main power provider, Luma, says it's prioritizing restoring power to hospitals, water, and sewage facilities, but there's still hundreds and thousands of people without power and no word on when it'll be restored. Lindsay?
Long few days ahead, potentially. Ike Ajachi from Puerto Rico. Thanks so much, Ike. Meteorologist Cecily Tynan from our partner station in Philadelphia, WPVI, joins us now. Cecily, thank you so much for coming on. What impact does Ernesto still have in store?
Well, Hurricane Ernesto is likely going to be intensifying into a major Category 3 hurricane as it heads to Bermuda. Now, right now, it's moving away from Puerto Rico. It's taking all its heavy rain with it. It's a Category 1 hurricane, but once it gets into the open Atlantic, this system is really going to strengthen. So here's the track, becoming a Category 3 hurricane by Friday. Now, its closest approach to Bermuda, Friday night into Saturday morning, likely a Category 2 hurricane, but this could drop up to 9 inches of rain for Bermuda, likely causing widespread flash flooding. Now, for the East Coast, Ernesto is going to really be churning up the Atlantic. So we're looking at high surf and rip currents all the way from Florida through the Jersey Shore up into Maine. Now, the spaghetti plots show the steering of Ernesto. We have high pressure in the Atlantic. We have a trough, a dip in the jet stream in the East Coast. So that's what steers Ernesto out to sea. That trough, though, also brings stormy weather across the Northeast right in time for the weekend, which is kind of a bummer. And that same system, that's hitting the Midwest right now. So Kansas City, St. Louis, Chicago, all in the threat of damaging winds and hail, and that likely will continue right into tomorrow. Lindsay?
And we can imagine rough surf on the East Coast, in particular in the Northeast. Cecily, thank you so much. With 83 days until the election, there are 2 new polls out tonight. One from Pew Research that shows Kamala Harris with a slight lead over Donald Trump, and a Fox News poll that shows Trump with a slight lead. The race still a dead heat. Today, former President Trump was in North Carolina to deliver a speech on the economy. His attacks against Vice President Harris again turned personal. Harris is set to deliver her own speech on the economy later this week. We have Arizona Secretary of State Adrian Fontes standing by to discuss 2 other campaign issues, election security and also abortion. But first, Rachel Scott reports.
Tonight, under pressure to focus on issues, not personal attacks, Donald Trump's campaign arranging a formal speech in North Carolina to address the most important issue for voters, the economy.
Does anyone here feel richer under Kamala Harris than Crooked Joe than you were during the Trump administration? Is anything less expensive under Kamala Harris and Crooked Joe?
It comes on the same day that new report shows inflation is cooling, now at its lowest level in 3 years. But the reality is many Americans are still feeling the pinch, Trump taking aim.
Inflation is destroying our country. It's destroying our families. We will target everything from car affordability to housing affordability to insurance costs to supply chain issues to the price of prescription drugs. I will instruct my cabinet that I expect results within the first 100 days or much sooner than that.
Neither Trump nor Vice President Kamala Harris have presented many specifics on their economic plans. Trump has promised to eliminate taxes on Social Security benefits for seniors and on tips. Harris has announced she wants to end taxes on tips, too, and also raise the minimum wage.
She's doing a plan. You know, she's going to announce it this week, maybe. She's waiting for me to announce it so she can copy it. Like, remember, a couple of days ago, and we will have no tax on tips. I said that was my plan.
Trump has been facing pressure from fellow Republicans to tone down his personal attacks, with Kamala Harris rising in the polls, now leading in key battlegrounds, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin.
And the one thing Republicans have to stop doing, quit whining about her. I want this campaign to win. But the campaign is not going to win talking about crowd sizes. It's not going to win talking about what race Kamala Harris is. It's not going to win talking about whether she's dumb.
But today, Trump ignored that advice, lashing out at Harris again and again.
She's not smart. She's not intelligent.
Even mocking her laugh.
What happened to her laugh? I haven't heard that laugh in about a week. That's why they keep her off the stage. That's why she's disappeared. That's the laugh of a crazy person, I will tell you, if you haven't known it. It's a crazy. She's crazy.
Harris hasn't disappeared. She just completed a 5-state battleground swing, speaking to massive crowds with her new running mate, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. Still the message tonight from Trump's running mate, Senator J.D. Vance, let Trump be Trump.
To the people who say that Donald Trump should do something different, they had an opportunity to make Donald Trump do something different by challenging him over 3 separate primaries, every single one of which he won. So I think that Donald Trump has earned the right to run the campaign that he wants to run.
Rachel Scott joins us now. And Rachel, we know that there's news tonight of a possible vice presidential debate between Tim Walz and J.D. Vance. Tell us what you know.
Yeah, Governor Tim Walz, Linsey, has officially accepted the invitation from CBS to debate Senator J.D. Vance on October 1st. Now, Vance has long said that he's looking forward to that debate. And of course, Linsey, I don't need to remind you, but of course, the very first presidential debate between former President Donald Trump and Vice President Kamala Harris will be taking place right here on ABC News on September 10th, Linsey.
We know it all too well. And Rachel, also, the Harris campaign just responded a little while ago to Trump's speech on the economy. What did they have to say?
Yeah, the Harris campaign is out tonight with a blistering statement railing against Donald Trump for his speech on the economy, saying that he doesn't care at all about working class families or middle class Americans. They go on to say that the choice this November is clear. Building up the middle class will be the defining goal of Vice President Harris's presidency. That's why she's focused on lowering costs for working families. Of course, Harris is expected to roll out her economic plan later this week, Linsey.
All right, Rachel Scott for us. Thanks so much, Rachel. One issue former President Trump did not discuss today was abortion rights, though it remains a top concern for some voters. Joining us now is Arizona Secretary of State Adrian Fontes. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I want to start with the big news Tuesday when you certified a voter-led ballot measure giving Arizonans a direct say in whether abortion in the state should be constitutionally protected. Tell us the language of the proposition, and do you expect it to pass?
Well, thanks for having me. We have a very strong citizen legislature process here in Arizona where the people can proposed laws. This is a constitutional amendment. Under Proposition 139 is the number, which will allow for abortions. The details you can find, I think it's up to 24 weeks and some other specifics. The bottom line is this, for me, is a record. Concerned with the processes more than anything, we saw a record number of petitions turned in. You saw them coming off that truck there, over 800,000 possible signatures. We certified 577,000 of them. The last record for turned in signatures was about 500,000. So this has been a massive effort by the citizens of the state of Arizona, and they really want to see this on the ballot.
Do you think that putting abortion on the ballot will have a secondary effect on who voters ultimately elect on November 5th?
Well, not as the secretary, but as an elected Democrat, I can say absolutely. This is an incredibly important piece of the freedom agenda that the Democrats have launched through our new presidential candidate. It's incredibly important because in Arizona, we don't like people telling us what to do. And when you've got folks trying to force folks into, force anybody into decisions with especially what they can do with their bodies, that's problematic politically. So I think this is going to be a big boost for Democrats in Arizona. But again, that commentary is as an elected Democrat, not as the Secretary of State. We've got to separate our duties from our opinions in this office.
Understood. And I want to turn to the issue of election security. As Secretary of State, you're Arizona's chief election officer. You've cited complaints from 2022 saying that voters were intimidated then by election watchers. But last week, a Maricopa County judge blocked enforcement of your state's voter intimidation rules, saying they violated free speech. What's your response?
Well, my response to the Free Enterprise Club, who brought this, is, what about the peaceable assembly First Amendment rights of the voters? The government makes folks stand in a line during a time, and we don't want them harassed or intimidated. And if some weirdo wants to come scream at people, we've got to be able to enforce some peace and quiet. We've got to be able to be civilized in the way we execute our elections. I know the Free Enterprise Club does not believe the same. I hope their donors take note of what's happening here in Arizona, and I hope the court eventually checks them. We will be appealing the decision, because what this does really is it pits the First Amendment right to free expression of folks who want to disrupt our elections against the voters themselves and our election workers. We need to protect our democracy, and I will not let this go quietly. I'm going to stand firm on the side of our voters.
The New York Times reported earlier this month President Trump asked donors to help him stop the steal. Do you still receive threats from people who believe falsely that election fraud is rampant?
Well, as a matter of fact, I am unfortunately among many in the nation who are still suffering these kinds of threats. Just Sunday evening in Arizona, an election official did receive a swatting threat at their home. Luckily, they were working already closely with local law enforcement, and the situation did not go awry. It went as scripted, and it's important that we continue to stay vigilant. But it is that kind of rhetoric, it is that kind of misinformation, and it's those kinds of lies that are causing this sort of violence in what ought to be the most civil of civilian exercises, and that is running our democracy in a reasonably peaceful manner. Have the debate, have the argument about the politics, but threatening or intimidating voters or elections officials is anti-American. And again, we're going to continue to fight against those efforts made by some folks who are continuing to grift for political purposes or personal gain.
How do you ensure the safety of poll workers going forward, and have such threats made it difficult to find poll workers in the first place?
Well, that's the tough spot that the Free Enterprise Club is trying to push us away from. Our guidelines that are under the lawsuit you mentioned earlier, really trying to give them some leverage and to standardize the rules that we have. Now, it's still against the law to harass or intimidate folks, but to be able to give standardized guidelines across the state is what we were trying to do. And there's folks that are just trying to disrupt things, cause chaos and uncertainty. And it's that kind of unpredictability that we've got to fight against. It's bad for society. It's bad for business. It's bad for science and law and medicine and education. And we've got to get back to some reasonable discourse, some reasonable way of behaving amongst ourselves. And we've got to get away from this nonsense that, threatening violence is actually a thing in the United States of America and here in Arizona. We must get back to being a civil society. We have to protect our democracy.
Arizona Secretary of State Adrian Fontes, we thank you so much for your time. Now to the war in Ukraine. The Ukrainian military has attacked multiple airfields inside Russia and taken dozens of Russian troops prisoner. Vladimir Putin, who's been caught off guard by the offensive, is promising to retaliate. Former U.S. Ambassador to Russia John Sullivan has some fresh insight. But first, here's our chief foreign correspondent, Ian Pannell.
Tonight, the moment a Ukrainian drone slams into a Russian military airfield, seen in video verified by ABC News, part of the largest ever combined attack on air bases in Russia since the start of the war. 4 Russian airfields, some hundreds of miles from the border, and at least one housing MiG fighter jets were reportedly hit by long-range drones. On the ground, Ukraine pressing its surprise offensive on Russian soil, catching the Kremlin off guard and seizing hundreds of square miles. Now, another region of Russia also declaring a state of emergency. More than 200,000 civilians told to evacuate their homes, with thousands of Ukrainian troops having crossed the border, releasing images of more than 30 captured soldiers, their eyes blindfolded with yellow tape. Ukrainian officials telling ABC News the video was filmed in Kursk, Russia. Ukraine says it's taken over 100 Russian fighters captive just in the last day. The Kremlin tonight claiming it's stopping the advance, killing hundreds of enemy fighters. But today, Zelensky insisting they are still advancing in a number of directions.
Ian joins us now from London. And Ian, we're hearing reports that it sounds like Ukraine is trying to embarrass Russia further.
Yeah, I think that's right, Lindsay. I mean, in truth, the longer this goes on, the more embarrassing it is for Putin. I mean, he's made a promise to throw Ukrainian troops out of the country. Well, that simply hasn't happened so far. And now Ukraine rubbing salt into the wound by opening a hotline, get this, for Russian residents who want to evacuate to Ukraine. But a senior Russian military official is now vowing to launch an all-out offensive. In other words, Lindsay, I think this is far from a done deal for either side.
Ian Pannell for us. Thanks so much, Ian. Joining us now is former U.S. Ambassador to Russia, John Sullivan. Ambassador, thank you so much for your time tonight. Clearly, Ukraine found a weak spot. Are you surprised this incursion was able to be kept quiet for so long before it happened?
Yeah, another surprise by the Ukrainians, Lindsay. We've seen it time and time again over the course of this war, whether it was resisting the initial Russian invasion, sinking the Russian Black Sea flagship, and now this invasion of Russia itself, kept quiet from the world, and a surprise to the Russians, a big embarrassment, political, personal setback for Putin.
What do you think the end game is here for Ukraine? Is it just to get leverage in peace talks?
No, I think it's more than that. This is a war. Putin started a war, invaded Ukraine, and the Ukrainians are fighting back in every way they can. Putin uses the euphemism of describing it as a negotiating tactic. He likes to use euphemisms in this war. He calls his war a special military operation. This is an invasion of Russia by Ukraine. Pro-Kremlin media, Russian media, social media bloggers are astonished at what's happened, asking the Russian government, how could you have left us undefended there? We've been at war with Ukraine for 2.5 years. So it's another example, as you said, of Ukraine surprising Russia and the world, frankly.
From a very real standpoint, if Ukraine has Russian hostages, would that move Putin to compromise, do you think?
Putin will never compromise. That's my opinion. If there will be opportunities for talks at some point, I'm sure. At some point in the future, I can't say when. But the other thing I'm confident of is Putin will never compromise his ultimate aims in Ukraine. He has said it over and over again. This war he launched, he calls it a special military operation, is to denazify and demilitarize Ukraine, which basically means remove the democratically elected government, substitute a Russian puppet government at a minimum, and control Ukraine. And he will never surrender those objectives. He may be forced into a stalemate, may be forced into a ceasefire, but he'll never surrender those goals.
You know Russia very well and the Russian people. Will the fact that tens of thousands of people need to now evacuate their homes perhaps turn public sentiment against Putin and this war?
Well, it will certainly have an adverse impact on public sentiment. It's more than just the loss of territory. It's the loss of conscript Russian soldiers we've seen captured, killed, that Putin promised the families and the conscripts themselves. These are people who've been drafted who really generally haven't been trained into effective soldiers. They weren't sent to Ukraine. They were kept in Russia on the understanding that they wouldn't be sent to war into what both the Russians and Ukrainians called a meat grinder there. And now those young conscripts are being slaughtered by the Ukrainians. That is not going to be popular in Russia among the families of those killed and among the conscripts themselves. So definite political blowback for Putin. How significant it will be, it depends on how successful this operation by the Ukrainians is. My guess is, my expectation is, Putin will amass large numbers of forces and eventually push the Ukrainians back. But that will drain his army, his military in Ukraine, and the special military operation won't be able to proceed as it had been.
Very interesting. Former Ambassador John Sullivan, we thank you so much for your insight. His new book, Midnight in Moscow, a memoir from the front lines of Russia's war against the West, is now available wherever books are sold. And in Moscow tonight, another U.S. citizen, Joseph Tater, has reportedly been arrested. Russian news agencies are accusing him of attacking a police officer in a hotel. So far, he's been sentenced to 15 days of administrative detention for petty hooliganism. However, he is still facing the more serious charge of assaulting an officer. This charge has a maximum sentence of 5 years in prison if Tater is found guilty. Now to the Israel-Hamas war. Another devastating attack in southern Gaza comes on the eve of high-stakes ceasefire talks in Doha. Hamas says they won't be there, and Iran's threat of retaliation hangs over it all. ABC's Tom Sufi-Burridge reports from Tel Aviv tonight.
On the eve of critical ceasefire negotiations, which the US hopes could dial down tension across the region and maybe avert a retaliatory strike from Iran on Israel for 2 assassinations, tonight, multiple casualties streaming into this hospital in southern Gaza. Mohammed overcome by grief and clutching the birth certificates of his newly born twins. They were just 3 days old when they were killed, along with Mohammed's wife, when an Israeli shell hit the family home, according to a local doctor. The Biden administration again calling on Hamas and Israel to reach a deal.
There is no more time to waste.
Tonight, an Israeli official saying Prime Minister Netanyahu has expanded the mandate of his negotiating team. But earlier, Hamas indicating it will not formally attend, saying tomorrow's talk should be about implementing a framework deal Hamas says it accepted months ago. Lee Siegel's brother, Keith, one of 8 American hostages still held in Gaza, last seen speaking under duress in a video released by Hamas. Lee saying the time for a deal is now.
Time is up. Close this agreement immediately, and we move on to trying to rebuild our country.
Tom Sufi-Burridge joins us now once again, reporting from Tel Aviv. Tom, what's the latest that you're hearing on the status of ceasefire talks?
Yeah, Linsey, we're getting new insight tonight from US officials who say it can take negotiators weeks to exchange messages with Yahya Sinwar, the alleged mastermind of the October 7 terror attack, who is hiding in Gaza and has the deciding vote for Hamas. And that clearly complicates the talks. Linsey?
Clearly it does. Tom Sufi-Burridge for us from Tel Aviv. Thanks so much, Tom. Today, the World Health Organization declared the Mpox outbreak a global health emergency. The virus originated in the Democratic Republic of Congo, where there have been more than 14,000 cases and more than 500 deaths. Cases have been rising dramatically there, and in neighboring countries, more concerning, there appears to be a new type of Mpox that's spreading. In the U.S., there are more than 1,600 cases. That's double the number of cases from last year, but significantly lower than the Mpox outbreak in 2022. The South Carolina Supreme Court has agreed to hear Alec Murdaugh's appeal due to possible jury tampering. Murdaugh is serving life without parole for killing his wife and son, but this appeal could get him a new trial. His lawyers claim that during last year's trial, court clerk Becky Hill tampered with the jury by going into the jury room to advocate for a guilty verdict. His lawyers say so she could write a book and make money. Hill is facing 76 counts of misconduct on those claims. She denies any wrongdoing. Now to the latest on the search for a convicted killer who escaped from guards at a hospital parking lot near Durham, North Carolina. Here's ABC's Faith Abube.
Tonight, after an exhaustive search for that escaped convicted murderer in North Carolina, authorities say they believe Ramon Alston has fled the Hillsborough area.
We feel pretty comfortable from a search standpoint that offender Alston is not in the immediate vicinity.
Officials suspending their ground search efforts and asking for the public's help, raising the reward for information leading to Alston's capture to $35,000. Alston breaking free in this hospital parking lot yesterday morning. Armed guards were transporting him to a medical appointment. His handcuffs and waist chain still on, but his leg restraints removed. The Orange County Sheriff saying he went to school with Alston's father and has known the fugitive since birth.
He's been involved in criminal activity since he was a juvenile. He's extremely cagey, he's extremely dangerous, and he has nothing to lose.
Alston was serving a life sentence for killing one-year-old Malia Williams in a random shooting in 2015. Her family telling ABC News they're displeased with the Department of Public Safety and their efforts to keep Alston in custody or lack thereof.
Linsey, authorities say a hospital surveillance camera did capture part of Alston's escape, but it wasn't enough to show exactly what happened because the convicted killer was, quote, moving too quickly. Linsey.
Faith, thank you. Still much more to get to here on Prime tonight. Back to school season now means back to school scams, from fake internship offers to impersonating school administrators. The new and disturbing method scammers are using to target students. But next, it's a national treasure and vacation hotspot, but travelers beware. The Grand Canyon can obviously be dangerous, even deadly for the unprepared visitor. ABC's Jacqueline Lee on what you should know before hitting the trail.
Rangers tell us the goal is to set up this entire rope rescue within 10 minutes of responding to a scene, and they practice this every single month.
There was a specific moment during our wedding. I looked at Jason, I looked at my children, and I realized this was real. That was my husband, and this was our family. We live in a very beautiful place, and sometimes the beauty masks what really is going on. Jason seemed happy. We all just thought the world of him.
This is her knight in shining armor.
Everything felt right. All of a sudden, I found this hidden folder. I opened it, and I don't think I can say it. I'm sorry. I just need a break. She put her hand to her mouth and gasped. It's shocking, gut-wrenching. I realized that my life will never be the same. Jason would kill me before he would let me tell anyone this part of him. He is in so much freaking trouble.
My stomach just dropped. I remember just feeling like, what the hell? That was my dad. It did not feel real. It felt so shocking. Like, what is going on?
Never in a million years did I ever think Jason capable of something so horrific. What did I miss?
That's when that fire inside of me shifted to a flame. I was like, it's on. I lured Jason to a public place. The whole police squad pulls up. I hear the most awful sound, like blood curdling, out of this world scream. And I realized it was coming out of me.
Betrayal is one of the hardest types of trauma to overcome.
Those letters and those apologies were to make him feel better.
Everything that he said was a lie. How could he do this? He just really didn't think I had it in me to do something. So I did.
Betrayal, a Father's Secret. The all-new season, only on Hulu.
You're watching America's #1 streaming news. Keep streaming with ABC News Live.
They call him the Beauty Queen Killer. He's targeting young women in malls.
I am single. I want to enjoy the company of a member of women.
He tortured me.
How did she survive?
9 days of terror.
The word accomplice came up.
Nobody knows the real story.
The Beauty Queen Killer. Only on Hulu.
Tomorrow morning, Halle Berry comes to GMA to talk about something deeply personal to her and so many women. What does she want you to know? Tomorrow morning on
Good morning, America.
We are in the midst of the dog days of summer. Temperatures are scorching. It's vacation time for many, and with those vacations come trips into the great outdoors. But tonight, a warning to new and seasoned hikers alike that the heat is no joke. In tonight's Prime Focus, our Jacqueline Lee traveled to the Grand Canyon, where officials are ready to respond, but hoping with a little preparation, all hikers can enjoy the beauty of one of our country's true natural wonders.
This summer has been a sizzler.
The heat is just unimaginable.
It's very hot.
The hottest week of weather in 30 years.
Record-setting temperatures sweeping the entire country.
Dangerous heat building across the country.
A heat dome parking over the west. Death Valley clocking an all-time high of almost 130 degrees. Just 5 degrees shy of the all-time hottest temperature ever recorded on Earth.
Las Vegas could see their earliest 110 on record.
You burning. Literally.
And just 3.5 hours north of Phoenix in one of the most popular national parks in the world, the Grand Canyon. What is it about the Grand Canyon that just brings people in?
Well, it's one of the natural wonders. Absolutely the view.
Deep, majestic canyons and trails so narrow that mules and donkeys are still used to deliver mail to the Havasupai tribe, located 2,000 feet below.
They're packing food, trash. If they're green and gray, they're the pack service mules.
Here on the Bright Angel Trail, we caught up with Megan Smith, coordinator of the Grand Canyon's Preventative Search and Rescue. The program first came to be in 1996 after an extreme heat wave killed 5 people, and the number of search and rescue events skyrocketed to 482.
It's hot. It's very hot. Just like temperatures in Phoenix. The bottom of the canyon is very close to the temperatures in Phoenix. It gets hotter as you go downhill.
The park search and rescue team, made up of 70 volunteers, deploys when hikers get stuck, often overcome with heat exhaustion or reaching physical limits.
A lot of preparedness issues, but also a lot of fitness issues.
Hiking is the most common cause of heat-related death in the country's national parks, representing more than 60% of all deaths. Just last week, a 20-year-old woman's body was recovered after she was reported missing. This is the 3rd death in the park in just over a week. The Canyon search and rescue team reportedly dispatched for 302 incidents and 455 hiker assists in 2023.
Every year, somebody somehow ends up in the bottom of the canyon or over the edge.
Here at Yaqui Point, on the south rim of the Grand Canyon, more than a dozen search and rescue volunteers are simulating a rescue.
It's important that we train so that we're proficient, being able to get to them as quickly as we can to render aid and bring them back to the top.
Rangers tell us the goal is to set up this entire rope rescue within 10 minutes of responding to a scene, and they practice this every single month. They say the most important aspects include not only practicing this descent and the operation, but also tying these knots for strength to safely rescue someone. What is the most critical aspect of search and rescue?
Timing is really key to it. The quicker we know that somebody is needing help, the quicker we can respond and mobilize and make that happen.
But search and rescue efforts are a last resort. Smith emphasizes the national park makes great efforts to educate hikers before they're caught in potentially life-threatening situations. So when you come to the Grand Canyon, you think, I'm here for vacation, to spend time with my loved ones, but you're saying there's way more that you have to think about.
You have to do a ton of research. You have to be honest with yourself about your fitness.
With the canyon's breathtaking beauty, seemingly endless vistas, and stunning rock formations, it's no surprise the Grand Canyon draws in nearly 5 million visitors each year. But park rangers say many underestimate the 7,000 to 9,000 foot change in elevation, as well as the searing heat's effect on the body.
You're going to have a lot of water loss, and you're with it going to lose a lot of electrolyte. So it's important that you replenish that electrolyte. Eating food is the best way. Pretzels, salty, chips, anything like that.
Because you're losing that through your sweat so quickly.
You can tell if you see somebody really in it that's been hiking hard and they're in a dark colored hat or t-shirt, they're going to have salt stains all over their shirt and their hat, sometimes even built up on their eyelashes, and that tells me as a medical provider it's somebody that I want to pay attention to.
Park rangers say hikers need to eat breakfast, lunch with plenty of salty snacks in between, and bring water, sun protection, and medications. The punishing environment was an unexpected wake-up call for Wisconsin visitor Machen Iwig.
Did you ever reach a point when you maybe got too far and it was too hot and you were concerned about your well-being?
Oh, definitely. I've never been out here hiking before, so the heat started to get to me. We were out there hiking around 1 or 2 o'clock. It was constantly stopping and constantly just kind of that uneasy feeling of dizziness. But then after that, we realized it's like we need to start drinking water in the morning and at night.
Aside from environmental stressors, search and rescue teams are facing a staffing shortage. So each call for service that could have easily been prevented strains the system.
We're having to go out over and over for something that's quite benign, for something where we're launching the aircraft and having to fly to someone's aid, and it's not a true emergency. There's a lot of risk involved, there's a lot of hazard involved, and that really wears on folks.
But Smith says many joined the profession to help people on their worst days. So when tourists trek to one of the most stunning places on Earth, like the Grand Canyon, it all starts with understanding how to cool off as the temperatures continue to heat up.
Really important to stop. You want to stop your body from overheating. People that shade up and rest, even if you've run out of water, you just got to stay put for the heat of the day. We really encourage people to not hike between 10 and 4.
So that will physically bring your body temperature down.
The key thing that you want to watch for in your hiking companions or anyone else on the trail is altered mentation, confusion, fainting. Anything indicating that the brain's not functioning is an immediate life threat, and you need to stop right away.
Some helpful tips there. Our thanks to Jacqueline Lee. Still much more to get to. Coming up, General Motors in the hot seat for tracking the driving habits of some 14 million vehicles and then sharing the revealing data with insurance companies. But next, there's some good news for consumers in today's inflation numbers. We take a look at where costs have improved and where prices remain stubbornly high.
Baywatch is a fantasy.
Baywatch was sexy.
Baywatch was the #1 show in the world. It was hot. When you hear that theme song,
I had no idea how much fun I was going to have.
It was addicting. People were just hungry. They were eating that stuff alive.
it was a wild time, and I was a wild chick.
Everyone tuned in to watch the show because you knew you were going to see someone sexy.
I mean, everybody was pretty.
Not just white women can look hot and sexy. Anyone can do it.
Jason Momoa exploded off of Baywatch.
Carmen was a bombshell who had something to say.
Pamela Anderson was an icon.
Pamela was the sweet girl from Canada who came to get the American dream.
I'm really proud of everything I've done. Almost.
Baywatch was a whirlwind of epic highs and bitter lows.
It was a lot of pressure. They had to wear next to nothing.
You want me to wear this?
What?
He with the best abs wins, or she with the best boobs win.
They just wanted to put you under a microscope and see where your flaws are.
Everybody was disposable, and if you didn't fit into their brand, you were gone.
Baywatch empowered me. Every now and then it hurt me. But so do the people and the things we love. I need to take a break, okay?
Greed and lust, fame.
It's crazy.
It changed everything.
It was about pushing the envelope.
Iconic. So hot.
Everyone likes to watch sexy things.
Let's go.
The ship is incredible. It feels like living in a science fiction movie.
We just saw what no one has seen before.
Wow, look at that.
Oh my gosh.
Well, dead ahead. Hang on!
We are heading into the unknown.
Hammer, hammer, hammer. It doesn't get any more cutting edge than this.
Friday night, the 2020 true crime. Pamela Smart, the infamous case that had everyone talking.
It has sex, betrayal, and most importantly, murder.
A beautiful 22-year-old woman having an affair with a 16-year-old boy.
She told him that the only way we can be together is if you kill my husband.
And now, after 34 years in prison and a dramatic plea for a last chance at freedom, her emotional, stunning new admission. 2020, Friday night on ABC.
It's lunchtime in America, so what are we serving up?
Well, how about everything you need to know?
Give it to me. Your health, your money, breaking news, pop culture, with the biggest stars, music, trends, and of course, good food.
It's all coming up on GMA3.
You're gonna love it. We'll see you then.
GMA3, what you need to know. A third hour of GMA in the afternoon.
So join us, afternoons.
For everything you need to know.
I love that.
Me too.
Reporting from the protests at Columbia University, I'm Stephanie Ramos. Wherever the story is, we'll take you there. You're streaming ABC News Live.
Welcome back, everyone. The latest inflation numbers were released this morning by the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and we know you're paying attention because Americans still tell pollsters that the economy is the top election year issue for them, be it rent, insurance, or simply a haircut. Where do prices remain stubbornly high? We take a look tonight in our By the Numbers. Year-over-year inflation is now 2.9%, according to today's Consumer Price Index report. That's the smallest increase in more than 3 years. March of 2021 was the last time the CPI fell below 3%. And for 17 months in a row now, wages have risen faster than prices, as the White House was eager to point out today. If these numbers have you scratching your head, that's because certain items that few of us cannot live without do remain very expensive, such as car insurance, up nearly 40%, according to the Department of Labor. Car prices, however, have leveled off. Something else we can't live without, of course, a roof over our heads, and shelter costs have risen more than 13% in the last 2 years. Painful, considering that rent, home insurance, and the like are by far some of our biggest monthly expenses. Also costly, prices for services like dental cleanings, haircuts, and elder care rising nearly twice as fast as the Consumer Price Index. And that's because as wages rise, as they have been for those in service industries, business owners tend to pass on some of those higher costs to you. And we still have much more ahead here on Prime tonight. A Detroit judge now faces criticism for scolding and handcuffing a student who was in his courtroom for a field trip. Why the judge says he put her in a jail uniform and then threatened her with jail time. And Sue Hugh joins us with a preview of the second season of her award-winning show, Pachinko, the epic drama that follows the twists and turns of a complex family across 4 generations.
If you were coming of age in the 1980s, the Brat Pack was near the center of your cultural awareness. But for those of us experiencing it from the inside, the Brat Pack was something very different. On June 10th, 1985, New York Magazine published Hollywood's Brat Pack. I just remember seeing that cover and thinking, oh. From then on, my career and the career of everyone who was involved was branded to the Brat Pack.
I'm really sorry that article had to come out.
I've never talked to anybody about what that was like. So I thought it might be interesting to try and contact everyone who was in the Brat Pack. Hey, Emilio Estevez. This is Andrew McCarthy calling you. Hey, Allie. Hey, Demi. Hey, Molly. Let's call Rob. Hello? Judd? Me? You around? You were not interested in talking about the Brat Pack for years.
I turned everything down.
How come you're talking to me?
Because you called me. It was time that we clear the air on a couple of things.
I love your stuff, Bob. Hey, thank you. I hated the Brat Pack for decades. What a disaster. If you could have the Brat Pack name not exist, would you?
It really irritated me. They said, what's more important to you, the movie or your life? And I said,
the movie!
Andrew.
Have you talked to the others? The others, like, again, it feels like a cult or something.
Yeah.
Why did we take it as an offense?
Well,
as opposed to like
the brat.
Because we were young.
We were afraid we were brats, you know? Are you in the Brat Pack?
I'm Brat Pack adjacent.
That's what I was saying.
I am not in the Brat Pack.
don't you?
Crush on you back in the day?
You did not, Andrew. No, you did not.
Being in the Brat Pack not only changed all of our lives, it changed what entertainment is. I mean, I'm not going to say we were the Beatles or anything.
Well, we didn't fill Shea Stadium. There were moments.
We could have. 1985, I think we could have.
So what are you filming?
Oh, we're just doing this documentary.
What's it about?
Ancient history.
When it matters most, America turns to David Muir and ABC's World News Tonight. Now streaming on Hulu.
I'm a rock and roll star. I'm not a saint. I'm John Bon Jovi.
John Bon Jovi. The new special, what you have not yet seen. John Bon Jovi with Michael Strahan. Now streaming on Hulu. Starting Monday, Kamala Harris and Tim Walz make their case for the White House. See it all streaming on ABC News Live. Non-stop coverage. David Muir and Linsey Davis reporting live at the Democratic National Convention on ABC News Live.
The first of its kind ban on wearing a mask in public is signed into law. A new study reveals what impact celebrities have on elections, and a law enforcement community comes together to escort a very special daughter to school. These stories and much more in tonight's rundown.
An arrest has been made in Maui in connection with a series of improvised explosive devices, or IEDs, recently hidden around the island. 47-year-old Robert DeMarin is in federal custody, facing charges for allegedly setting an IED outside of a school last month, and is also thought to be connected to similar devices placed around the island, some of which exploded. DeMarin made his initial appearance in court Tuesday, and the investigation is ongoing. Nassau County on New York's Long Island has signed a face covering ban into law. The ban makes it a misdemeanor to publicly wear a mask to hide one's identity, with exemptions in place for medical or religious coverings. It comes as pro-Palestinian demonstrators have taken to wearing coverings at protests. The ban is the first of its kind nationwide, and critics are concerned about how it will be enforced and if it might infringe on individual freedoms.
General Motors in the hot seat. Texas is suing the car maker, claiming GM violated the privacy of millions of Americans. The lawsuit claims the company misled customers into sharing data about their driving habits by enrolling them in technology-enabled safety programs and then selling the information collected by those programs to data brokers. A General Motors spokesperson says the company has been, quote, in discussions with the Attorney General's office, and says, quote, we share the desire to protect consumers' privacy.
Many celebrities have used their platforms to get out the vote for their candidates. And it works. A new Harvard study says that celebrities were found to be very influential in promoting civic engagement. The study notes that the U.S. lags behind many other democratic nations in voter participation, but that voter registration and poll worker volunteer rates both increase when a celebrity promotes them. A field trip to a Detroit courtroom took a serious turn. ABC affiliate WXYZ reports that the nonprofit Greening of Detroit brought a group on a trip to the 36th District Court. WXYZ says Judge Kenneth King saw a teenager who was asleep and felt she gave him attitude when he called her out. He then had her placed in handcuffs and jail clothes and ordered her to sit in a lockup. The teen was eventually let go. The nonprofit said they were in touch with the child and her parents and called the judge's methods unacceptable. As children began to return to school, one California student had a special escort on her first day. Deputies with the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department search and rescue team escorted the daughter of the late deputy Gonzalo Galvez, a member of the Sheriff's Enforcement Bureau who passed away last week from cancer. Galvez's daughter hugged each of the deputies present as they brought her into school and also waved at a helicopter flying above belonging to Galvez's unit.
The academic year is underway in many places, and with that back-to-school shopping also comes scams. Experts are now warning phony emails and texts targeting parents and students, even college students, are all at an all-time high. Becky Worley has the details.
Back to school means new pencils, backpacks, and scams. Visa saying they've seen a 71% uptick in chatter on the dark web related to back-to-school scams.
During the back-to-school period,
there's a certain amount of anxiety. And when consumers are stressed, they're not thinking clearly. And so that spells a higher amount of success for the fraudster.
Fraudsters trying to get money or personal information through scams like emails or texts pretending to be from a school administrator, fake scholarship applications, even back-to-school shopping sites that aren't legit and offer prices that are too good to be true. But it's not just parents of young kids that need to be vigilant.
18 to 24-year-olds are more likely to fall for a scam. So it's a really good time to have a conversation, especially with kids going away to school, about online scams.
Scams targeted at college students, like rental listings, where a student might put up a deposit and then the person they've been dealing with disappears. Fake internship offers, where there's some sort of payment upfront for supplies required. Even an unpaid tuition scam threatening students that they'll be unenrolled if they don't pay over the phone.
18 to 24-year-olds grew up with the internet. They're not as skeptical as older people. They're used to just pulling out their phone, making a purchase, doing things online that they're not thinking, hey, I could get scammed, or hey, this website might not be real. Make sure you know who's on that other end.
Meaning that an important part of a student's education these days is learning to avoid scams.
All good to know. Our thanks to Becky for that. Pachinko, the dramatic series based on a New York Times bestselling novel, is back for a highly anticipated second season. It's already won 11 international awards, including a Peabody and Critics' Choice Award. It's a story of survival, love, and resilience told across 4 generations of a Korean immigrant family. Let's take a look.
내가 할아버지는 맨날 내가 날아다녔으면 좋겠다 하셨대. 이 세상이 정말로 얼마나 넓은지 보라고.
기억나? 그때는 우리가 얼마나 행복했는지.
14년입니다. 나를 왜 찾으십니까?
놓친 적이 없으니까.
The showrunner and executive producer Soo Hugh joins us now on set. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I sort of teared up watching that. I've seen it a million times.
It is very emotional. I think that is something that is going to resonate with so many viewers, or has already, obviously, with season 1, but continuing now into season 2. But how meaningful that something you've made still brings tears to your eyes. Yeah. We saw it right there. Season 2 begins Osaka in 1945 during World War II. What connection can we make from the way season 1 ended to this beginning?
Yeah, so we jumped 7 years from the end of season 1, and like you said, we jumped straight into World War II. And for so many of our characters, those years have shown just how strong their survival instinct is. And we get to catch up with each of our characters, both in the present-day storyline, which is 1989, and the 1945 storyline.
You made the decision to switch eras from one scene to the next, which actually differs from the actual book. What made you decide to take that structure?
Yeah, so, I have this extraordinary gift, which is this book, this amazing book. And the book is told linearly, and it's the coming-of-age story of a girl named Sunja. And in thinking about an adaptation for the television and looking at the differences of the novel form from television, it was really important to me to be able to show the themes of our show right away from the first episode. And by cross-cutting the past and present, the story of the grandmother as a child and the grandmother in present day, I feel like we saw the themes magnified and was really able to follow the emotional core of the story.
How did you feel that you were able to bring Sunja to life from the book? Obviously, she's this girl, this woman and mother who has endured so much.
Yeah. I credit our 2 actresses who play Sunja. One is a total discovery, Minha, and the other is the Meryl Streep of Korea, or what I like to say is Meryl Streep is the YJ of America. You have a legend and you have a newcomer, and they're both playing the same character, and they really define Sunja.
No other show has ever been told in 3 languages, Japanese, English, Korean. What was it like to produce that?
It was crazy. A lot of, and so much, I have such a newfound respect for language that the show has taught me just how complicated language is and yet also how universal emotions are. We have a team of translators and interpreters who really do the hero's work. But it's amazing that even though there's so many languages spoken on set, the act of communicating becomes so primal, and it was really beautiful to see.
Major themes here: identity, family history. How do you think that the main character, Solomon, is able to really resonate with audiences?
I mean, I think so much of Solomon, especially for immigrants and immigrants' children, especially for anyone of the diaspora around the world, not just in Japan, can really relate to Solomon, what it feels like to live between two countries, what it feels like to live in that no man's land of belonging and not belonging. And I feel like the biggest question our show really asks is, what is home? Is home a physical place, or is it the emotional, spiritual place that your family has created? And I think those questions that Solomon asked are something I know I grew up with, and I think so many people I talk to have grown up with.
Congratulations on all the success that you all have had already. Want to let our viewers know season 2 of Pachinko premieres August 23rd exclusively on Apple TV+. And that is our show for this hour. I'm Linsey Davis. Be sure to stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. Thanks so much for streaming with us. Coming up in the next hour, we're tracking Hurricane Ernesto as it batters Puerto Rico, dumping a foot of rain and knocking out power to nearly half the island. Now it takes aim at Bermuda. And how did a lethal dose of methamphetamine end up in candies distributed by a food bank? The race to track them down before it's too late.
It was a regular day for 19-year-old Melissa Witt.
She went to meet her mom at a bowling church league, but she never makes it into the bowling alley. Something terrible had happened to her. Melissa was a good kid. She had big dreams for her life.
And then she disappears.
My gut knew this was not a young girl who just took off and ran away.
New information into the disappearance of Melissa Witt. Pools of blood were found by detectives.
We were sick to our stomachs.
I just love to have her back more than anything in the world.
It is a heart-wrenching day for the family of 19-year-old Melissa Witt.
Police found the body in the Ozark National Forest.
You had several suspects.
All these kinds of leads. Who could have done this?
You have a known serial killer in your area.
Could he be involved?
Find the evidence, find the DNA profile.
We had to find that person. Time was of the essence.
Every blood spot matters. Every piece of DNA matters. You're looking for that game-changing piece.
We're actually finding key evidence that could have slipped through the cracks.
One of our guys says, you're going to see this.
There's another one.
What could be underneath these headstones? Her last hours on this earth were probably the most horrific a person can experience.
This beautiful young girl. Police will find out what happened.
At wit's end, the hunt for a killer. Now streaming only on Hulu. You're watching America's #1 streaming news. Keep streaming with ABC News Live. Why do so many people start their day here?
From ABC News, this is Start Here.
To be in the know and get a different take on the day's top stories.
A lot of news today, so let's get into it.
Listen now to the Daily News Podcast honored with 4 Edward R. Murrow Awards and see why the New York Times calls it a news podcast worth listening to. Start Here, ABC News. Make it your daily first listen.
Now, that's a part of the story I bet you didn't see coming.
Wherever you get your podcasts, Start Here. Nightline, the stories that shape your world, that shape your life. Dramatic, stunning, empowering, jaw-dropping. The most powerful stories of our time. Nightline, on right after Kimmel and streaming on Hulu.
What's good to watch, read? Where can I get a great deal on what I'm just dying to buy? Oh, it's all right here. GMA Life. Get the latest celebrity buzz, deals and steals, and the coolest lifestyle tips from GMA.
I love that so much.
Streaming weekends on ABC News Live.
Reporting from Monterey Park, California, I'm Robin Roberts. Wherever the story is, we're going to take you there. You're streaming ABC News Live.
Good evening, everyone. This is ABC News Live Prime. I'm Linsey Davis. Thank you so much for streaming with us. We have a lot of news to get to tonight, including the developments after Hurricane Ernesto became a Category 1 hurricane hitting Puerto Rico, leaving nearly half the island without power. The state of things on the ground as high winds and floods impact residents and where Ernesto is on track to hit next. Plus, the surprise Ukrainian attack inside Russia that's forcing nearly 200,000 Russians to flee. The massive overnight attack and where it was targeted were in the region. And how one teen is racing around the world and bringing extra attention and resources to fighting cancer. But we do begin with Hurricane Ernesto barreling across the Atlantic Ocean at this hour, packing 75-mile-an-hour winds and gaining strength. After battering parts of Puerto Rico, Ernesto is now headed north and could become a major Category 3 by Friday morning, approaching Bermuda. This is obviously a new blow to recovery from Category 5 Hurricane Maria in 2017. We'll have the timing and track of the storm in a minute. But first, Ike Ajachi leads us off from Puerto Rico.
Tonight, Ernesto is now officially a hurricane and growing stronger by the hour. After battering Puerto Rico, the images still coming in. Ernesto dumping nearly a foot of rain in spots. Rivers raging over their banks. Some villages reportedly cut off. Powerful winds gusting above 85 miles per hour, knocking down trees all over the island and knocking out power to more than 700,000 homes and businesses by midday.
Puerto Rico dealing with the effects of Ernesto all day long, with crews working to clear streets filled with downed trees, just like this one.
When did you lose power?
Yesterday.
Natalia Brito and her family now staying with relatives who have a generator.
I'm hoping the energy will come back soon, so that's my only hope.
In Cabo Rojo, they needed heavy equipment to clear this road so emergency vehicles could get through. The system hitting the Leeward Islands with heavy rain and howling wind. From the Virgin Islands to Guadeloupe. In Saint Martin, this cargo ship breaking away, drifting in the bay. Back in Puerto Rico, the trauma from 2017's Hurricane Maria still fresh in the minds of so many here. The Category 4 storm decimating the island. 7 years later, Puerto Rico's power grid still hasn't fully recovered.
Thanks to Ike for that. Meteorologist Cecily Tynan from our partner station in Philadelphia, WPVI, joins us now. Cecily, thank you so much for coming on. What impact does Ernesto still have in store?
Well, Hurricane Ernesto is likely going to be intensifying into a major Category 3 hurricane as it heads to Bermuda. Now, right now, it's moving away from Puerto Rico. It's taking all its heavy rain with it. It's a Category 1 hurricane, but once it gets into the open Atlantic, this system is really going to strengthen. So here's the track, becoming a Category 3 hurricane by Friday. Now, its closest approach to Bermuda, Friday night into Saturday morning, likely a Category 2 hurricane, but this could drop up to 9 inches of rain for Bermuda, likely causing widespread flash flooding. Now, for the East Coast, Ernesto is going to really be churning up the Atlantic. So we're looking at high surf and rip currents all the way from Florida through the Jersey Shore up into Maine. Now, the spaghetti plots show the steering of Ernesto. We have high pressure in the Atlantic. We have a trough, a dip in the jet stream in the East Coast. So that's what steers Ernesto out to sea. That trough, though, also brings stormy weather across the Northeast right in time for the weekend, which is kind of a bummer. And that same system, that's hitting the Midwest right now. So Kansas City, St. Louis, Chicago, all in the threat of damaging winds and hail, and that likely will continue right into tomorrow. Linsey?
And we can imagine rough surf on the East Coast, in particular in the Northeast. Cecily, thank you so much. With 83 days until the election, there are two new polls. One from Pew Research shows Kamala Harris with a slight lead over Donald Trump, and a Fox News poll shows Trump with a slight lead. The race still a dead heat. Today, former President Trump was in North Carolina to deliver a speech on the economy, and his attacks against Vice President Harris once again turned personal. Harris is set to deliver her own speech on the economy later this week. ABC's Rachel Scott has more.
Tonight, under pressure to focus on issues, not personal attacks, Donald Trump's campaign arranging a formal speech in North Carolina to address the most important issue for voters, the economy.
Does anyone here feel richer under Kamala Harris than Crooked Joe, than you were during the Trump administration? Is anything less expensive under Kamala Harris and Crooked Joe?
It comes on the same day that new report shows inflation is cooling, now at its lowest level in 3 years. But the reality is many Americans are still feeling the pinch, Trump taking aim.
Inflation is destroying our country. It's destroying our families. We will target everything from car affordability to housing affordability to insurance costs to supply chain issues to the price of prescription drugs. I will instruct my cabinet that I expect results within the first 100 days or much sooner than that.
Neither Trump nor Vice President Kamala Harris have presented many specifics on their economic plans. Trump has promised to eliminate taxes on Social Security benefits for seniors and on tips. Harris has announced she wants to end taxes on tips, too, and also raise the minimum wage.
She's doing a plan. You know, she's going to announce it this week, maybe. She's waiting for me to announce it so she can copy it. Like, remember, a couple of days ago? And we will have no tax on tips. I said that was my plan.
Trump has been facing pressure from fellow Republicans to tone down his personal attacks, with Kamala Harris rising in the polls, now leading in key battlegrounds, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin.
And the one thing Republicans have to stop doing, quit whining about her. I want this campaign to win. But the campaign is not going to win talking about crowd sizes. It's not going to win talking about what race Kamala Harris is. It's not going to win talking about whether she's dumb.
But today, Trump ignored that advice, lashing out at Harris again and again.
She's not smart. She's not intelligent.
Even mocking her laugh.
What happened to her laugh? I haven't heard that laugh in about a week. That's why they keep her off the stage. That's why she's disappeared. That's the laugh of a crazy person, I will tell you, if you haven't known it. It's a crazy. She's crazy.
Harris hasn't disappeared. She just completed a 5-state battleground swing, speaking to massive crowds with her new running mate, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. Still the message tonight from Trump's running mate, Senator J.D. Vance, let Trump be Trump.
To the people who say that Donald Trump should do something different, they had an opportunity to make Donald Trump do something different by challenging him over 3 separate primaries, every single one of which he won. So I think that Donald Trump has earned the right to run the campaign that he wants to run.
Our thanks to Rachel Scott. Now to the economy and that encouraging news on inflation tonight. Consumer prices were up 2.9% in July compared to a year ago, the first time below 3% since March of 2021. What could this mean for interest rates for credit cards, mortgages, and car loans? Here's ABC senior White House correspondent Selena Wang.
Tonight, promising news on the economy, the inflation rate cooling, falling below 3% for the first time in 3 years since early in President Biden's presidency. Consumer prices rising 2.9% in July compared to a year ago. The cost of used cars and trucks, medical care, and airfare down. And Americans may finally get some relief at the grocery checkout. Those prices rising by only 1.1% from last year. The president saying it's proof his policies are working.
The U.S. beat inflation. Yes. I told you we're going to have a soft landing. We're going to have a soft landing. My policies are working. Start writing that way, okay?
The news comes just weeks before the Fed prepares to hold a key meeting, already signaling a rate cut could come as soon as September. That could affect interest rates for mortgages, credit cards, and car loans.
Finally, some good news. Selena Wang joins us now from the White House. Selena, what else can you tell us about what the administration is saying about these latest inflation numbers?
Well, Lindsay, tonight the White House is saying that there is more work to be done, that prices are still too high for many Americans. And President Biden has made clear that lowering costs for Americans will be a top priority for the last few months of its presidency. This is going to be the focus of his event tomorrow in Maryland, and Vice President Harris will be right there beside him. Lindsay?
Selena Wang from the White House. Thanks so much, Selena. Now to the war in Ukraine. The Ukrainian military has attacked multiple airfields inside Russia and taken dozens of Russian troops prisoner. Vladimir Putin, who has been caught off guard by the offensive, is promising to retaliate. Here's our chief foreign correspondent, Ian Pannell.
Tonight, the moment a Ukrainian drone slams into a Russian military airfield, seen in video verified by ABC News, part of the largest ever combined attack on air bases in Russia since the start of the war. 4 Russian airfields, some hundreds of miles from the border, and at least one housing MiG fighter jets were reportedly hit by long-range drones. On the ground, Ukraine pressing its surprise offensive on Russian soil, catching the Kremlin off guard and seizing hundreds of square miles. Now, another region of Russia also declaring a state of emergency. More than 200,000 civilians told to evacuate their homes, with thousands of Ukrainian troops having crossed the border, releasing images of more than 30 captured soldiers, their eyes blindfolded with yellow tape. Ukrainian officials telling ABC News the video was filmed in Kursk, Russia. Ukraine says it's taken over 100 Russian fighters captive just in the last day. The Kremlin tonight claiming it's stopping the advance, killing hundreds of enemy fighters. But today, Zelensky insisting they are still advancing in a number of directions.
Our thanks to Ian Pannell. And now to the Israel-Hamas war. Another devastating attack in southern Gaza comes on the eve of high-stakes ceasefire talks in Doha. Hamas says they will not be there while Iran's threat of retaliation hangs over it all. Tom Sufi Burridge is in Tel Aviv tonight.
On the eve of critical ceasefire negotiations, which the US hopes could dial down tension across the region and maybe avert a retaliatory strike from Iran on Israel for 2 assassinations, tonight multiple casualties streaming into this hospital in southern Gaza. Mohammed overcome by grief and clutching the birth certificates of his newly born twins. They were just 3 days old when they were killed, along with Mohammed's wife, when an Israeli shell hit the family home, according to a local doctor. The Biden administration again calling on Hamas and Israel to reach a deal.
There is no more time to waste.
Tonight, an Israeli official saying Prime Minister Netanyahu has expanded the mandate of his negotiating team. But earlier, Hamas indicating it will not formally attend, saying tomorrow's talk should be about implementing a framework deal Hamas says it accepted months ago. Lee Siegel's brother, Keith, one of 8 American hostages still held in Gaza, last seen speaking under duress in a video released by Hamas. Lee saying the time for a deal is now.
Time is up. Close this agreement immediately, and we move on to trying to rebuild our country.
Tom Sufi Burridge reporting now to the latest on the search for a convicted killer who escaped from guards at a hospital parking lot near Durham, North Carolina. Here's ABC's Faith Abube.
Tonight, after an exhaustive search for that escaped convicted murderer in North Carolina, authorities say they believe Ramon Alston has fled the Hillsborough area.
We feel pretty comfortable from a search standpoint that offender Alston is not in the immediate vicinity.
Officials suspending their ground search efforts and asking for the public's help, raising the reward for information leading to Alston's capture to $35,000. Alston breaking free in this hospital parking lot yesterday morning. Armed guards were transporting him to a medical appointment. His handcuffs and waist chain still on, but his leg restraints removed. The Orange County Sheriff saying he went to school with Alston's father and has known the fugitive since birth.
He's been involved in criminal activity since he was a juvenile. He's extremely cagey, he's extremely dangerous, and he has nothing to lose.
Alston was serving a life sentence for killing 1-year-old Malia Williams in a random shooting in 2015. Her family telling ABC News they're displeased with the Department of Public Safety and their efforts to keep Alston in custody or lack thereof.
Our thanks to Faith for that. Known to millions around the world, the cherished founder of the famous Amos cookies, Wally Amos Jr., has died. By using his aunt's recipe, he created the cookies so many love. But before famous Amos, Wally was a Hollywood talent agent, and baking was just a hobby. Then Marvin Gaye and Helen Reddy gave him money to get his business off the ground in 1975. The rest is history. His family said that Wally died peacefully at 88 years old after battling dementia. Still much more to get to tonight. Coming up, we may finally have the answer to a 5,000-year-old mystery. What the newly analyzed origins of the central stone tell us about how Stonehenge was built. But next, she's the first Amapiano artist to ever headline some of the world's biggest gigs as she proudly amplifies the South African music genre. Uncle Waffles, the barrier-breaking Swazi-born DJ, joins us when we come back.
What does it take to be the most watched newscast in America?
An operation to capture ISIS fighters.
Is this our Combat Operations Center?
We're approaching the gate now. Militants came in from 4 or 5 different directions. Operational nuclear reactor. So you have a couple loaded and ready to go. The house is destroyed, but the flag, there's not a tear in it.
Not a tear in it.
How important is this label right here, Made in the USA? Look at your smile. You're proud of this.
I love this.
Great work.
Hi.
Where are you? Where are you?
Appreciate you.
Thank you. David, good to meet you. Ismail? David.
David.
Yes, yes. I'm David Muir.
I know who you are.
You
I watch
do?
you every night.
ABC's World News Tonight with David Muir is America's most watched newscast.
Hey, good morning, America. Good morning, America.
Good morning, America.
Good morning, America.
Money. Are you ready? They are ready. Covering the biggest events in the country right now.
There's a lot going on here this morning.
It's always a good time. That's what the show's about.
That's good.
Really good.
Very good.
Coming in hot. Jimmy coming in hot.
It's far from elementary.
Good morning, America. I'm not going to try to strut like Michael or anything.
I have known George a long, long time.
Have you ever gotten him to dance?
Look at that face.
You don't just see it, you feel it.
I'm in.
I'm in.
I'm in too. I'll be here.
I am here and so happy.
I'm in.
I'm in too.
I'm in.
That tells you something when Snoop Dogg's in. Michael, George, Lara, Ginger.
Reporting from the campaign trail here in South Carolina, I'm Rachel Scott. Wherever the story is, we'll take you there. You're streaming ABC News Live.
Welcome back. We're tracking several headlines around the world. Today, the World Health Organization declared the Mpox outbreak a global health emergency. The virus originated in the Democratic Republic of Congo, where there have been more than 14,000 cases and more than 500 deaths. Cases have been rising dramatically there and in neighboring countries that have not previously suffered outbreaks of the viral disease. More concerning, it appears to be a new type of Mpox that's spreading. In the U.S., there are more than 1,600 cases. The New Zealand Food Bank is trying to contact up to 400 people after it realized it had unknowingly distributed candy laced with a potentially lethal dose of methamphetamine. So far, 3 people have been treated in the hospital. At a news conference, authorities said the sweets had a high value of about $600 per candy, which they believe means an unknown member of the public accidentally donated them as opposed to a deliberate attack. And a 5,000-year mystery may finally be solved. The 6-ton altar stone at the center of Stonehenge came from the far north of Scotland, not southwest Wales, as previously thought. A new analysis published in the scientific journal Nature suggests parts of Great Britain could have been far more advanced than historians originally thought. Our next guest is an international superstar, Swazi-born DJ and music producer, Uncle Waffles. She is known as the Princess of Amapiano, a South African music genre that she is amplifying around the world from its addictive beats, rhythmic melodies, and viral dancing. Let's take a listen to her latest hit, Wadi Busa. Joining us now is none other than Uncle Waffles. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
So tell me, how did you come up with the stage name Uncle Waffles?
So the story is not really that climatic. My friends came up with it in high school because they used to call me Uncle Waffles. Because of the Teen Titans, there's a song where they sing waffles, waffles, waffles. I know this is not really the best story ever, but yeah, from that I became Waffles, and then my manager decided that we should just keep Uncle Waffles because it works for the brand. It makes me unique.
It just stuck for sure. It is unique and sets you apart, to be sure. How would you describe the Amapiano genre?
So Amapiano to me is South African genres all coming together to form a final form, because it's a mixture of kwaito, house, gqom, to create this new genre with something that is called a lock drum. So a lock drum is basically a synth beat, 808, Amapiano percussions, to make this particular sound that sounds like an African drum within all the songs. Yeah, I think that's the perfect way to describe it. It's a genre that is truly the merger of all the South African sounds together.
Give us an idea of the creative process behind creating these songs like Wadi Busa, which is so catchy.
Yeah, so I'm still fairly new at creating music. This is my 3rd year creating music, so it still takes me quite a long time to create music. It always a number of studio sessions together. We have 3 or 4 studio sessions, bringing in different vocalists to test the music, to see where they're leaning towards, you know? Yeah, so it takes us a lot of time, 10 sessions per song most days. So yeah, that is mainly our process. And then after that, we start testing the music out at sets and shows to see how people feel about it before we ever release it.
And how do people feel about it?
They loved it. From the first time I hinted it, everyone was like, drop it next week, and it was not ready.
Oh,
so
really?
It was like, yeah.
But it feels like this is catching on around the world,
Yes,
even though a lot of people may not understand a language like Zulu.
Yes. We have the language barrier, but people understand dance. And dance is the forefront of the genre. So no matter what, people have understood it. People sing whatever they hear, and that's okay. Yeah.
You have already dropped 3 EPs. When can we expect a full album?
Next year.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm just going to say next year, yeah.
Because it does take a while, as you said, the creative process.
Yeah, we've been touring the whole year this year that we haven't been able to release it down in studio. That's why I've only released 1 song this year. But we're hoping that next year we're going to dedicate time to creating a masterpiece.
You've had a number of firsts, including being the first amapiano performer to perform at Coachella.
Yes.
And now you're about to go and perform in Brooklyn this weekend. First time for an amapiano headliner. How does it feel to be the first and breaking so many of these barriers?
There's a lot of responsibility. I always feel like I need to make sure that people enjoy it, to make sure that the door stays open for everyone else so they can come into the space as well. So I'm always really nervous to be the first, but I'm so grateful that it can be me, and I hope I'm representing it well, you know?
You've already done so much, just 24 years old.
Yes.
What advice would you give to a young, up-and-coming artist?
Find something that makes you uniquely you and stick to it. You can be in a space where there's 100 DJs, but there's only ever going to be you if you keep true to what makes you unique.
Good advice there, Uncle Waffles. What a pleasure to have you come by. We really appreciate it.
Me.
Want to let our viewers know her latest single, Wadi Busa, is out on all streaming platforms, and you can catch her perform right here in New York this Sunday at the Brooklyn Mirage on August 18th at 6 p.m. And still to come, he has a pilot's license, and now a 19-year-old is setting his sights even higher. How he hopes to make history. Whenever, wherever news breaks, it's so important to always remember that lives are changed. Here in London, in Buffalo, Uvalde, Texas, Edinburgh, Scotland, from Poland once again tonight. Thank you so much for streaming with us. Ukrainian refugees here in Warsaw. Do you think you'll ever be able to go back home? We're heading to a small community outside of Mexico City. Splintered houses and splintered lives. The magnitude of the devastation. You're streaming ABC News Live. Reporting from Rolling Fork, Mississippi, Santa Fe, New Mexico, Raleigh, North Carolina, the U.S. Capitol, Mayfield, Kentucky, Minneapolis, Mexico, Tongass National Forest, Alaska. Getting you behind the stories as they happen, giving you a front row seat to our world as it plays out in real time, live. ABC News Live Prime. We'll take you there.
Stream ABC News Live weeknights, America's most honored streaming news program, only on ABC News Live. Streaming free right now wherever you stream your news.
GMA's surprised people across the country, helping find thousands in unclaimed money.
This really is a big check. Yeah!
And this summer, we're at it again. That's incredible. Because nothing's better than hearing you say,
"Show me the money!"
on Good Morning America.
With so much at stake in our world right now, more Americans turn here to David than anywhere else. And now, America's most trusted, most watched newscast, ABC's World News Tonight with David Muir, is available to you on YouTube.
Hi, I'm Andy.
And I'm Sabrina.
And we're moms, juggling tons of stuff every day, like all you moms out there.
And you know what we love?
Really love
Pop culture.
So listen now to our new podcast, Pop Culture Moms,
wherever you get your podcasts.
ABC News Live, honored with 8 Emmy nominations, more than any other streaming news network. And ABC News Live Prime with Linsey Davis, the first and only streaming show nominated for Best Outstanding Live News Program. This is ABC News Live.
A pilot from Florida has set out to fly all around the world, and at just 19 years old, he is aiming for a special record. ABC's Danny New has the details.
Who's flying around the world in this tiny plane?
Face waves left or right.
Why, that would be 19-year-old pilot Ethan Guo, and he's going for a record.
Would you be the youngest person to do this?
Technically, I will be the youngest person to do it.
I spoke to Ethan while he was staying in Egypt as he continues his pursuit of becoming the youngest person to fly to all 7 continents solo. During the span of 100 days, the plan is to fly 50,000 miles, cross through around 60 countries, and then ultimately finish with Antarctica. Obviously, when you're alone, all of that takes a lot of concentration.
I'm up there like 13,000 feet flying over the Alps. I'm looking down, I'm like, wow, those mountain tips are pretty close to me.
However, Ethan has had plenty of time to prepare. This Floridian, originally born in China, first imagined this dream at 13 and then immediately started working on graduating from high school early.
There's so many obstacles within this journey that flying is literally only 20% of it.
He then spent hours and hours asking sponsors to help him afford this trip.
95% of the times you get no's, and it hurts.
And trying to find an insurance plan that would cover him. Not to mention convincing his mother.
Once she found out trying to fly around the world, she went ballistic.
But after taking off from Geneva, Switzerland last week, Ethan is finally doing this thing. And perhaps what's most important to Ethan is this part. During his trip around the world, he is also trying to raise $1 million for childhood cancer research in support of his cousin who has been fighting non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Ethan sure can pack a lot into one trip.
I get to do with my limited abilities what I can to try and make this world a slightly better place.
So impressive and for a good cause. And that is our show for tonight. I'm Linsey Davis. ABC News Live is here for you all night with the latest news, context, and analysis. You can always find us on Hulu, Roku, Pluto TV, the ABC News app, and of course on abcnews.com. The news never stops. Thanks so much for streaming with us. Have a great night.
Whenever news breaks,
We are here in Israel, a nation at war after that brutal surprise attack by Hamas.
On the ground in Ukraine, reporting from Lewiston, Maine.
The scene of a horrific mass shooting.
ABC News Live is right there everywhere.
From the scene of that deadly missile strike in Dnipro, Ukraine.
Reporting from the earthquake in Turkey.
In Rolling Fork, this tornado tore through this little town.
From the most devastating disaster in Hawaii.
From Charleston, South Carolina, on the 2024 campaign trail.
In Iceland, let's go.
Traveling with the president in Mexico City.
Wherever the story.
From the front lines, from southern Israel.
Outside the Gaza Strip.
In Beirut.
From the FBI.
Reporting from the nurses on the picket line.
Here at 10 Downing Street in London.
Streaming live to you.
Wherever the story is.
Wherever the story is.
Wherever the story is. We're going to take you there.
You're streaming ABC News Live.
ABC News Live.
You're streaming ABC News Live.
ABC News Live. Streaming free everywhere. America's #1 streaming news.
First thing in the morning.
There's a lot going on.
We're still in a flash flood warning.
To catch you up with what happened overnight.